Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill. Hello, and welcome again to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down again for a second recording with our good friend, Mr. Charles Antis. And Charles is the founder and CEO of Antis Roofing and Waterproofing out of the lovely state of California. And we're going to talk a little bit further on some of the things that we spoke about last week. We got deep into the conversation about investing in our employees, and we wanted to dive a little bit deeper there with Charles today. So thank you again for joining us, Charles. Looking forward to another conversation.
I'm ready for 10 more of these. Let's keep them rolling.
Yeah, I'm down, man. You're a great conversationalist and a lot of fun to have on. So I appreciate
Thank you.
your good spirit and nature. So so let's talk a little bit about investing in your personnel, your teammates, your staff. What does that look like for you, and why do you feel the way you do about how you go about that?
You know, when we were doing a podcast before, I was remembering something and I wanted to say it, so I'll start with it here. It's like it didn't feel like there was enough. I wanted to take care of all of my people, all of everybody from the very beginning, but honestly, there's that need to self-preserve, and it didn't feel like there was enough. And that's the way it used to be. And before we talk about how we got there, I gotta tell you how it is today. I have a rule written in our handbook at Antis Roofing that says it is our job to err on the side of generosity with all of our stakeholders. So it's the opposite of what that feeling was that there's not enough. Now I've got an edict that says I have to go and exaggerate our generosity with everyone, not just our employees and everyone. And that's the mindset of having a business that has a culture that nurtures its employees. It's that mindset. And we can talk about how we got there. I remember like thinking literally, I can be generous with the community. I can donate that Habitat for Humanity roof and keep those families dry because we had a good year. But if I give raises to all my people and we have a bad year, then I'm out of business. So it didn't feel like there was enough. And I want to give you, it's normal to have that feeling. But it's also somewhat normal to be like Daniel Day-Lewis in that movie, There Will Be Blood, and he says, "There's a competition in me. I want no one to succeed but myself." And I wanna tell you, there's something similar about there's not enough to, "I want no one to succeed but myself." And it's kind of like something we see the worst in men, we've seen it, and we might have had times in our life that we felt it, but the flow of a business living where people sleep well at night, where your brand is attractive on the outside and your culture's attractive on the inside is that one, there is enough, and we'll use it for our people first and then out through the community. It just takes a while to get there, and that's the stories I think we need to tell.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've heard Joe Rogan reference this a few times. I don't know if you listen to him much, but he talks about there's enough pie for everyone, and we've got to work on helping just continue to build a bigger pie instead of trying to keep more of what is already there. And I think that's something that you envelop in the attitude and approach you take to business.
I think though that what happens is these human stories show up and they change our hearts, and I have a lot of those, that showed up. I can remember one of our employees, Joaquin. I can remember about 16 years ago. I had a few employees. I didn't want to commit to another employee because that again could be the burden that tanks everything. But there was a guy that must have worked for me on a job, and he knew about us, and because I come to work one day to my small office, and there's a truck in the parking lot. I don't recognize the truck, so I look at it. There's somebody inside it, and as I'm about to go into my building, this guy gets out and he looks at me and says, "Hey, Jefe, any work for me today?" And I just said, "No," and I shook my head quickly and went inside and looked out the window, and he was still standing there. I thought that was odd. And then the next day, wouldn't you know, I pull in the parking lot, and I was in the back of my mind, and that truck's there again. This time he gets out a little quicker. I get to see him when I'm pulling in. I'm a little less uncomfortable, but I still like, "What this guy doing in my lot?" I come out, and then same thing. He says, "Hey, Jefe." I go, "What?" He goes, I'm Joaquin." I'm Charles." He goes, "Do you have any work for me today?" And I said, "I'm sorry, man, I don't have any work." And I went inside again, went around through the blinds and looked through the window. 3rd day, same thing again, and, I gotta tell you, something happened to me, I don't know what happened, but something magic happened in my brain somewhere between night 3 and 5, because all I remember is on Friday, I was hoping that truck was gonna be there, and I didn't know I was gonna hire him yet. I just remember a shift in my heart appeared, and the guy that I first annoying was suddenly impressing the hell out of me, and I thought, "Wow, what if he's gonna be there today?" And when he was, he got out of the truck, he said, "Hey, F.A., you work for me today?" I said, "Yes," because I
Oh,
knew he had a
wow.
job, and we hired him, and he's worked for me ever since, and I think that there's something
Wow.
that happens when we can pause to see those around us, but I think it's hard to see, it's hard to commit, and that's a simple story. There's lots of levels of that happen along the way. If you fast forward to anti-roofing today, what I'm doing for Joaquin and other first generation and immigrant people, what we're doing as a team is we're investing heavily. I mean, I listened to their stories. I told you about the story of respect of young Pedro growing up on a farm, how his dad would wake him up before school and honor him in a way and hold his stare and say, "Hey, will you work for me a couple hours before school?" And how we don't talk of people like, "Get over here." That's not showing respect. We listen to where they are. We tell those stories of how deep things can get around here, but there's all sorts of deep stories. The guys in the field and a lot of our immigrant labor, we want them to get involved in donating roofs for Habitat for Humanity and other things too, and they do. They are our labor on all of our habitat roofs that we donate for the last 98 families in Orange County. But they also, because we pause and look at their families, they pause and look at other families. We had a guy ever who calls me on a Friday and said, "Hey, I was doing the roof on this condominium, and this family said they have a leak in their deck. And I went and looked at their deck leak, and they need a new deck. But the husband has cancer. He's not able to support his family." And Ever says, "Charles, if you donate the materials, I'll donate my weekend to help this family." And so when you hear families start to happen like that, now we're kind of breathing this culture. So at Antis Roofing, we believe in giving back to the community, but we have to start with our people and we have to lift them up. So we don't only donate. Work with them donating on times, we work with them educating them. If you had a limited time in school and you come from another country, there's so many barriers. So we teach English. We don't just teach English in a standard English class. We bring a professor at a university for people that are really trying to learn English so they can advance their careers. And we bring them in a few hours, a few different times during the week, and we have an in-work class to give them English because we also have an EQ. We have a higher education for leadership, not taught by an American based company, but a company based with those who were born in other Latin American countries that are coming here and translating in such a way so that we can teach higher education in the sense of emotional intelligence, of understanding assessments and understand different ways of communication. And so when we start doing things like that, then it starts to become magic in our culture. And that's what we have today. And I got to tell you, we didn't have that several years ago. We were trying, but we weren't heard. But when you really listen to your people and how they grow up, you hear the same story. I got to tell you, that Pedro story, I've heard it 12 different times, almost identical to a father waking up his son. When you hear all these stories over and over again, you're able to change how you listen, how you do things. And we have tremendous stories in this country. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited now. We have to I'm hyperventilating. I get excited, I hyperventilate. We have in our company now this opportunity where things are growing exponentially. Where I told you in the last podcast that when we go out in the field on job sites, we have a lot of 20-year-old um, sons of other workers that are working here, and we're able to say, "Hey, there's a lot more opportunity here. You can come and work in sales. In sales, you can make 6 times what you're making now." And we see people building these bridges, but we also see them giving us stories of growing up in Mexico where they have an annual tradition of aguinaldo, which is this time where their companies give generously back to their families around the time of Christmas. So for the renewing and the refreshing. And so at Antis Roofing, we have an aguinaldo. And last year we were due to make $500,000 at the end of the year. We decided to take all that money, even though we didn't have a great year, and we turned it into aguinaldo and we gave it all back to our employees. And so when you start to live like this in this generous capacity, then when the rains come, like we have right now, we ask our people to work 70 hours a week sometimes, there's a natural flow. We're all in this together, and there's a feeling and a vibe here, whether you're on a job site or you're inside the office, that is tangible. I remember I used to feel it when I wanted to have it, when we didn't have it, and you could feel it that it wasn't there, and now you can feel it that it's there. There's a connection, there's a trust, there's a giggle that's occurring all the time. Like, what are we laughing about? I don't know, but there's a trust that's occurring, and it's because we're working through our people, investing first, and then outside through community. And I think there's one more story I'd quickly say on that. My grandfather was an immigrant in the 20s. He followed the Depression, the Dust Bowl west from Arkansas. He was picking beets in Idaho, and he finally landed a job in Northern California for the McLeod Lumber Company. And, at the time, they were doing a lot of cutting in Northern California and in Southern Oregon. Now, despite the fact that they cut down a lot of trees, let's take that part out of the story. This company at the time had a great community mindset. They said, if I'm going to attract these people, I'm going to build for them. And so Grandpa tells the story all the time of the hospitals, some of the best teachers in the state brought in that were paid higher. They brought in roads and schools. They even built a professional baseball stadium where they created a minor league baseball team, and Grandpa played shortstop on it. And he actually, yeah, up until his death about 5, 6 years ago, he would tell me this story at 98 years old, how, but God damn it, Charlie, there I was in 1932 on the tryout for the St. Louis Cardinals. I hear that story, and all because he had, after being a migrant worker, he landed in a place that felt like it's our job to take care of our people and then to build community. I say that's what business needs to return. It's my job, just like McLeod Lumber Company, where if there's rumors that if you had a light go out or plumbing go out in your house, just call Mama McLeod. She'll be there that night to fix it. I believe that companies need to have that same honor. I had this edict's not the right word, this idea with our staff that I want next year Antis to bring nutritional training. And I mean it in a big way, because if you look at the demographic of Latin American immigrants, as a whole, we're not that healthy. We could be healthier. And I can tell why when we go out and have the lunch wagon here and we're having dessert for breakfast. And I participate in this, and I think, oh my God, there's such an opportunity to pause on this and to lift nutrition. Even if Antis has to create a little store, and I'm making this up as I go. And imagine that kale works really good in a traditional Mexican market, then let's give them free kale. I'm not saying that works, but once you have an idea, like, hey, maybe Boys and Girls Club and Antis Roofing and the Roofing Alliance can work together for clubs everywhere. That's all it takes. You bring an idea to a group of people and you treat them generously. Watch those ideas become thoughts, become things that are done, become new ways of business being done. So it's a powerful way to evolve as a business, to make things matter through your people.
Well, and you've said a few key things here in that last thought, and it ties back to what you're saying before. And it's number one, you've got to be out with your voice. You've got to speak up, right? You've got to be vulnerable and maybe feel like you're talking out of turn, maybe feel like you're being brave and bold and sticking your neck out. But then after that, very quickly, you have to follow it with action and leadership. And then when it's time to lock arms, lock elbows, and get other people motivated and excited about this good idea of service and something that's truly going to be a benefit, you can create some synergy and actually get something done. And I think the spirit of the goodness that happens when those things occur, that's when all of these other people step forward with generosity and kindness, and you actually have the ability to create a movement. This isn't an event. It's not a onesie twosie weekend thing that is going to fade off into the distance and never going to happen again. You're talking about creating something that can perpetuate and actually feed communities and people for years and decades to
You
come.
know, it's talking to you is making me define it a little. It's wow, it's exactly the same. Look at the economy of my company and the economy of my community. In the economy of my company, I believe it is my job to err on the side of generosity, to do all that I can and then some. And my experience is that always perpetuates safety for the company. It feels the very same in community. I think the formula is maybe just both need to be equal. And I because I used to be so, generous, like I said, in the community, so afraid to be generous in the company that I was isolated. I often say I was like Will Ferrell in Old School when he's streaking down the road and he's telling his wife to get in the car, and she's like, "You're the only one. Come on, honey, get in the car." Like, and she's like, "Dude, get in here," you know? Everybody's
Yeah.
doing it and nobody's doing it. I think that it's hard to listen at first because as a founder of a business that's a craftsman, you know, we're not necessarily the best experienced people managers. And, you know, and I think that's a common thing in the trades. But wow, when we invest in our people, I mean, you just can't invest enough. It is the most true thing that I've discovered. Everything that I do today that I said I could never do, it ends up giving us this insurance, it seems, in not only our company, but in on the way we sleep at night. And I think it's a profound experience to have the same experience with community. You know, it's kinda like that old Jean Valjean story from Les Mis, you know, it's a beautiful story. If you ever watch it, it's hard to watch that without crying. You know, when he's forgiven for stealing the candlesticks by the priests and he says, "You forgot the silverware." That's a beautiful example for us, you know, but then, you know, and to see him forgive those that would condemn him, you know, there's something powerful about living a life through your company where it's really built for doing good. It's not a church. But why does it have to be a church? Why not this company be a powerful force for good in the lives of these families and the lives of community? There's something powerful about returning to that early example of industry.
Well, and you brought something else up that I think people must. I'm sure some listeners have wondered. Okay, great. Charles is talking about EQ, which is emotional intelligence. What in the heck does that have to do with tar paper, drip edge, and shingles? You know, like why why would I have classes for emotional intelligence or for English or other things to educate people that are out there swinging hammers and that I need to hurry and get that extra 50 squares on as quickly as possible. So, what would you say to that?
Well, I'd say that it's really common to not have that, and if you're not exposed to things like Vistage or something or an owners group, it's you're busy working all the time, you won't see that, but start with yourself. So to the business owners out there that's never done a personality assessment, I want you to go and take it's gonna cost you $20, do a DISC assessment, DISC, and I'm gonna give you what it's gonna tell you, and I'm gonna give you this is the Charles Antis easy version of a DISC assessment. Okay, you're an animal trying to survive in the world. Are you a lion? Are you always in control? Are you a beautiful cocker spaniel? You're popular, everyone loves you. Are you a gazelle in the middle of the pack? Or do you fly solo at dawn and at dusk like a fox? So you're either careful like a fox, you're middle of the pack like a gazelle, you're popular like a beautiful dog cocker spaniel, or you're in charge and control like a lion. That's what a disc tells you. And the reason it matters is this. My whole life, I've wanted to be the center of attention. And then I actually thought that was something wrong with me and said, "No, I don't," almost, you know? And then finally, when I took a disc assessment, it says, "Charles, you're a cocker spaniel. You want everyone to smile." Then I said, "Oh," I forgave myself for what I thought was a defect instead of examining myself for who I am. So what assessments and EQ does is it basically gives you a gift to understand yourself different than what your mom and dad told you. And sometimes it's eye-opening. Some of us don't get that until we're 50. And then you give that same level of gift to your employees. Now you'll know if you're a cocker spaniel, I got to talk different than you than if you're a gazelle. If you're a fox, I got to talk different than you. Then I got to talk to you if you're a lion. And so what DISC gives you is your assessment of who you are and languages and how you people like you connect with people like that. And there's an EQ goes. EQ is the most beautiful thing. It's so counterintuitive at the first, you know, it's basically says, why are you don't want to talk in front of people? It's because if you were talking in front of people 10,000 years ago on the plains, you would have had a spear chucked through your heart. Just Sounds a little crazy, but once you acknowledge that and say, "Okay, maybe that's true," and put it out there, suddenly you will lose the fear of talking to people because I'm reminded, Mike, you're not gonna throw a spear through my heart. And all because I do think in terms of that. I imagine and what it would feel like to go up to you and give you a hug, imagining your beard rub against mine. That doesn't give me any weird feeling. It gives me a sense of closeness. I imagine what you smell like when you can get past all the barriers that we put out there. You can learn ninja magic in communicating with other people.
Well, you look at animals, right? And that, I mean, that's what they do. They really size each other up, and when they greet, they get reacquainted or they familiarize themselves, and they make sure what they're dealing with. And we all have language and communication that happens, and sometimes we actually speak it audibly. I heard that stated once, and really stuck with me.
Yeah, most
Most
of
of our
our communication
communication
is
is
all
not
everything else we're
verbal.
doing. Yeah, I
That's
mean, you
right.
see somebody with no enthusiasm and saying the right words, and you wonder why we actually consciously are believing him, but subconsciously, our
Right.
bodies are
Yeah.
completely rebelling against what we're
Yes.
thinking we're thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that you brought up emotional intelligence in English classes and investing in education, and back to what we said earlier about building people. You're building people, and people build a community. And then they can also build a company, but the company, again, building a community. And we're all about community. You talked earlier about trading value and adding value and sharing value. And you think back to the 1800s when people were on the barter system. I'll trade you a bushel of corn for a bushel of potatoes, and it was value for value so that everybody could survive together and thrive. And now this stupid monetary system kind of gets in the way of all that. And we have a different way of measuring things, and I think it's distorted a lot of what we perceive in society as value, and it's taken the personal part of things out and added the glitz and the glamour and the bling and the flashy lights, and the this outward display of wealth as value. And that really, according to what you're saying and how I feel too, that's really actually not the case. Because when you're sick on your deathbed, I highly doubt you're worried about, counting your stacks of cash in the bank, or worried about, how your stocks are performing.
Yeah, you'd probably be like, "Oh my god, now my kids are gonna have to hold this burden."
Right?
You know,
Yeah, right.
what's this recent, somebody in your state, Marie Osmond, was talking about, not leaving her kids an inheritance, and it sounds cold at first, but I actually feel the exact same way. I wanna give it all away, and then, yeah, I'm sure there's that sense of, "What's the healthy amount?" Maybe to help with down payment on a home someday. I don't know that that's it anymore because everything's changing. But, maybe there's that education help, and why is there need to be more? The more you give something to someone, the more that you're telling them by your actions that they must hold on to it when possessions don't have anything to do with making you happy. And when you really get down to it, when you get older, I'm 60 now. I can see this, man. Okay, do I have food on the table today? Do I have a safe, dry roof over my head? Am I not looking to go to jail? Then I can be an idiot and be miserable today, but, nothing's gonna take me down. I mean, who cares if we make a lot of money or not? Really, it's felt like it's important my whole life, but wow, we're always functioning. Let's not worry about the bottom line. There's a certain healthy amount we have to, obviously, but let's focus on the people and let's let things flow. And the more that you do that today, the more it stands out. We're living in a world where it's perceived that there's little authenticity. And I think that may be accurate, but whether it's accurate or not, it's perceived that way. And so you need real stories that matter to connect. And inside the company, it's never mattered more that you share and you invest in time, getting to know the relationships, but heavily invest. If you're spending, whatever that number is over the top of employee, 30% over the top of the cost of the employee, if you're, it feels like it's got to double in the world. And I was saying that before COVID, and now it seems, difficult but true. But the more we're able to commit to our employees, even though it said, well, other companies aren't doing it, they're not giving vacations, they're not doing this, they're not doing dollar match on their 401k. But the more we are willing to do, the more we thrive. That's the bar that seems the most consistent. The more that we first talk of doing and then start doing, whether it works or not, whether it's efficient initially or not, the more that we work toward and dream of, the better the culture gets. The culture's never been like it is now. And I've seen those magic moments in other cultures where I didn't think it was possible, where I'd walk inside some place people were like, God, are they actors or are they really that happy to be here? And now that's what you might feel if you come here. And it's a fascinating thing, and I'll do anything it takes to keep it.
Well, it's really fascinating what you've built. And again, I was able to meet with some of your team at that Bust of Success event. Don't know if you'll be at the International Roofing Expo here in a little bit, but
I'll
I'm
be
looking
there in
forward to that.
Dallas.
Yeah,
I'm
so
I'm
I'm
speaking some I think I'm speaking at a or I'm leading a roundtable. I think it looks
nice.
like I'm speaking, but I don't think I'm speaking, but I might be.
Okay. Okay.
You
Well,
always
I'll look
I'm
forward to.
always ready to talk. If I go to an award show and I know we're not even nominated, for some reason, my mindset is I start preparing a speech, and I've learned rather than to turn it off, just to let myself go with it.
Uh,
I'm preparing speeches all the time, and what is that thing that's gonna actually move people today? If you think in terms like, "Wow, what if I could awaken Mike to see the world more powerfully, more magical than he ever did? What would be the exponential benefit of that to the entire world?" And so when you think like that, I think one of the reasons we win awards is we expect that we're going to win awards even in times that we're not, because our intention is so pure toward what we'll do with that. If we get that award, then they'll really be heard. Then they'll do that over here. And it becomes a really pure thing for a team to do something as simple as keeping a family safe and dry and making it very dutiful. Yeah, and that's the thing that's never mattered more than it matters today. Maybe it mattered back when grandpa was, going west in the 1920s when he was in a new wilderness area and they were creating community, but it feels like we're in a new wilderness right now sometimes. It's time for us to create community.
I think we're reinventing a new world every day, and sometimes I think we wake up and realize maybe we feel like the aliens. I mean, I know I feel that way sometimes when I look at what society wants to show me, but what you're doing and what we like to try and do is we want to create something that is real, that is lasting, that is impactful, that matters. Again, investing in people, investing in community, investing in our industry that we love so dearly and want to serve and help it to thrive and be successful. And I think, we got to lead from the front. We got to lead by example. I mean, that's why we created this podcast. That's why we have these discussions, because we want others to jump on the train and help continue to carry that flag so that these young folks that are coming out of high school and maybe dropping out of college looking for an opportunity to have a career in something good and meaningful and actually fulfilling, they really ought to consider the trades. There's a great opportunity for them here, and we need to do a better job of marketing that, if you will, for lack of a better term, so that they give it a chance and find out, wow, what I built today, putting that roof on or framing those walls or pouring that concrete, that's going to be there for 30, 40, 50, 100 years. I mean, talk about legacy. I mean, that's awesome. And I was a young craftsman and I grew up in the trades, and I still drive by buildings that we built and houses that we framed, 30, 40 years ago. And I love it. It's fantastic to show that to my children or my grandchildren.
Sometimes I feel myself just like, "Oh god, here I go again, telling about pointing out the roofs." It's like, "Did I ever tell you?" Like, this I've done it 20 times, and I can't even get out. "Did I ever tell you?" Like, why do I keep doing that? Like, I'm so proud. "Yeah, I did that roof and that one. That huge one, we did that." But then, then you start remembering all the stories. I think my family humors me pretty good on those.
Yours too. Well, I think it's a part of being in the trades. We're proud of the work that we've accomplished with the sweat of our brow and just the strength of our hands and our backs. And there's something noble in that. So I just appreciate you being a part of this community. I can't wait to continue to build and stand shoulder to shoulder with you and your comrades, and continue to help raise awareness of the things that other companies could be doing to enjoy this same not only success maybe monetarily and financially and with growth, but also with actually building up teams of people that are going to go home and love and serve their families and build their families, which again builds a community and just keeps this goodness perpetuating, because it's really something noble and wonderful. And I'm appreciative of your role and your example in that.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mike.
Well, been so much fun, Charles. I really appreciate your time today. If there was one more parting word for this second episode, what would you have people come away with?
Well, it's just all about your team, man. And if you want to have a team and lead a team, you have to attract great leaders besides yourself. It's not going to be you, probably the founder, it's probably going to be the manager, the one that can level it. It's going to be that other person. And to attract the great leaders, you really need to show that you're community focused. When you're community focused, then you can attract someone like we have our COO, Susan DeGrassi. She also serves on the American Red Cross board. She's on the National Roofing Board for Women, National Roofing and Women Board. Did I say that right?
I think
National Women in
it's
Roofing Board.
women. Yeah.
And she's on the
Yeah.
local chamber board. She's very active, and she just told me recently she wants to get involved in the NRCA committees. And it's like, I mean, but that's who she is. And if you and that's why we have that. It's like I don't have the ability to manage it. I want you to. That's my main point. I have to hold the vision and remind people and tell the stories of why it's important, how everyone's watching, how everything hinges on it. But I also need the person and the people that can manage it. And to bring those people in, to plug them in and make them proud, you need to have a purpose. You need to tell that story of why it's important, whether it's going to Washington with the roofing pros, or whether it's training everyone in your company in the new pro certification through the NRCA, or whether it's getting involved with Ronald McDonald Houses. I'm sorry, I said the same thing twice. Boys and Girls Clubs, or I was undressing myself for all the gear I'm wearing. Ronald McDonald House, Boys and Girls Club, or I'll grab something else, Habitat for Humanity, if I had the building hat right. But I mean, it's those things that make people pause to come. And being a small roofing company is nothing to be ashamed of. It's the trade that keeps families safe and dry. But purpose, man, purposeful stories, talking about people, why it matters, what you're going to do for them and the community. You'll attract and you'll manage a team that literally changes the world.
All of that. Well, awesome. Well, great pleasure, Charles. Thanks again for joining us. I can't wait to have another discussion with you and catch up with you in Dallas.
On it. We'll do it there. Thanks.
Take care, brother.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.